Good morning, everyone. Here we are, almost in 2025, right? We are almost in the year 2025. Getting very, very close. I can see 2025 peeking around the corner over there. Very, very cool. So I figured today we're going to give Final Cut Pro a report card. Give it a grade for the report card for the year 2024. I'm not going to tell you what mine are. We're going to hear from you first, and then we're going to do, at the end, I'll tell you mine. Let's take a look back here. Look at this. Very rainy today. Very, very rainy today. So it's kind of muddy in the backyard. Even though we have grass, it's a little on the muddy side. We have all the leaves are pretty much gone. I did a pretty good job this year, pretty organized. Oh, look at that. We got a thumbs up in the other camera. That's interesting. That's the Mevo Plus or something I got in the backyard. Of course, we have it here, but I didn't know the Mevo also did that. So our friend Daniel says, A plus, B, or B plus, or A plus. So I did A plus because you can do A, of course, and you can do B plus, and you can do B, and you can do B minus, and you can do C plus. But when you get down into the D's and stuff, there's no D plus. If you think it's a D, this is going to be a straight D. So A plus would be, it's completely perfect, and it doesn't need any new features, or no updates, no bug fixes. It's perfect. And it has all the features that you're ever going to need. Well, I don't know who's going to do that. Eric Emmerich says, it was trending a solid D. Version 11 brought it up to a B minus. There you go. There's a B minus for it. Now, Eric, why was it a solid D? Why do you think it was a solid D for you? 10.8.1 would have been the last version. I know, buddy, from over there on the X platform. Good morning, Richard. A new avatar here. So very, very, very cool. Avatar man. I know, buddy, over there on the X platform. I would say B. No text-based editing and captions need work, but the AI functions like the masking is great. Jason, I agree with your comments. No text-based editing is kind of like, it's way overdue. This NAB, all the other NLEs have had text-based editing for 2 years. For 2 years, we've had text-based editing on all the other major NLEs, and we still, after 2 years, don't have it in Final Cut Pro. That's kind of disappointing, especially when they jumped from 8 to 11. 3 jumps. However, so here's what's probably going to happen. We're going to see Final Cut Pro 11, 11.0.1, 11.0.2, etc., 0 point something for 2025. Next year at the Creative Summit, we're probably going to see 11.1. That'll be the next bigger update. 11.1, probably the Creative Summit in November. They did such a great job this year. The Final Cut Pro team, Future Media Conferences, Apple itself. A D because of lack of updates for 24, okay? I'm not going to disagree with that. I don't agree with the D, though. I just don't disagree. I agree with the comment, but I don't agree with D. Yes, so here's the deal. For 2024, we had 3 updates. We had 10.8 on June the 19th, I believe, 10.8 on June the 19th. Then we had 10.8.1 about 6 weeks later, so probably July, in August or September, we got 10.8.1. And then in November, we finally got Final Cut Pro 11, which was a big, giant update. Well, I'm saying big in the terms of the quality of the features that they added. That masking tracking feature is pretty powerful. It's very handy and very powerful feature. So I'm sure that took a lot of work to get that. Now, they did add auto captions. Let me just check one thing here. They did add auto captions. Let me just check this. So they did add auto captions. Now we're going to do this because this is very important about the auto caption. Yeah, captions themselves are very limited. Okay, they're very limited as far as formatting and stuff. They're not really meant for burning in or subtitles. Okay, we got a couple of comments. David Borbus, no grade for me. I gave up Final Cut Pro like 11 years ago, especially since I work with fiction and documentaries. Difficult to use Final Cut since everybody's using Avid, Resolve, or Premiere. Completely understandable. I'm not disagreeing with your opinion of it. Okay, I understand you use the NLE that your work system requires. He says, but Final Cut Pro 11 seems to put things on the right track again, especially with auto captions. Auto captions we want to talk about for what's going on with auto captions. Let me get another comment up. For me, A+ because of features like magnetic mask and call out really has enabled me to make more interesting educational videos for my pupils. For others needed professional work, maybe C. So there you go. We got an A+, we got a B, and B-, and I'm not sure what Daniel said. Daniel said something. I select A plus B because Apple give us a little bit of update and feature, but Apple should be a little faster on it. They indeed should. I don't think anybody thinks that Apple is a speed demon when it comes to putting features out. Now, some people say that they're cautious. They hold back till everything's perfect. Well, 2 years for text-based editing is ridiculous. They're so far behind in text-based editing. They're 2 years behind. I've been using text-based editing in DaVinci Resolve for at least since they put it in the beta, I guess last year in NEB, or maybe the year before. I can't remember. But I use it all the time. I love text-based editing, not for short social media video, not for a short little quick one, but for longer form. First thing I do, drop a clip, even audio clips in DaVinci Resolve, let it transcribe, and then go through the transcript and decide what I want to do, or put subtitles in the main timeline. So they're 2 years behind on text-based editing. And yes, I know Intelligent Assistants has had lumberjack systems for years. I understand that. We're talking about native features. We're talking about native features. As a matter of fact, well, I got this up. Let me just type this in real quick. Here we go. So we're going to go over here to let me see something here. Let's see something. Today, I don't know. I know it says it's available to the end of 2024, which we're still in the end of 2024. So let's check this out. Our good friend Caption, Philip Hodges and Gregory Clark from Intelligent Assistance and Caption Animator. Now, here's what Caption Animator does. It takes, once you transcribe audio in Final Cut Pro, it takes the transcription, the text, and puts it into regular titles. Either you can have it as a regular title or you can do subtitles, which you can format, change position, any title that you have on your system. Any title that you have on your system can be used as a template. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up, what's today? The 28th? This is on sale for 25% off. Instead of, is it $20 normally? And right now it's $15, $14.99, I believe. I can't tell because I already have it. So it's on sale for 1 or 2 more days. That's why I'm bringing it up again. Now, so here's the deal. You do, in Final Cut Pro 11, you do transcribe audio, let it go through its thing. By the way, it's very fast. Whatever they've done, they supercharged the speed in Final Cut Pro 11 transcribe to captions. Transcribe audio to captions. Transcribed audio to captions or whatever. Transcribe to captions, whatever it is. You select the clip on the timeline, and there's like 6 different places you can choose that option, and it'll transcribe it. It's very fast. Once you have the captions, you'll notice that they take up the entire screen, the captions. So you got to read, you got to do this. Okay? These aren't subtitles. That's the problem. You don't have a lot of formatting options with pure caption file. Caption Animator lets you take any title that you have on your system. You make one title in the timeline, position the title where you want it, choose the font, choose the color, choose whatever you want, the way you want your subtitles to look. And then when you open Caption Animator and drop the project on there, the timeline on there, it'll say choose a template or whatever it says. And you choose that template that you just made of the title, and it'll transpose all of the captions that Final Cut Pro made into actual titles. Now, at this point, they're still the same length as the captions. But a little birdie has told me they're going to put a character limit so you can shorten the titles, the caption titles, rather than just take the default length that Final Cut Pro makes, because that's what I need. I like my titles short. If I'm going to subtitle something, it's going to be a video 3 minutes or under. I'm not going to subtitle a 30-minute video, but something that's something quicker, like for social media, I want short subtitles that come on and off the screen quickly if I'm going to burn them in. So that'll be very, very beneficial for me, and I'll go to Resolve Less. Because even though I can't text-based edit specifically, once the captions are done, I can go to the timeline index and go exactly where that phrase or sentence is that I want to see on my timeline, and I can always cut it there. It's more steps, but it's still somewhat very handy, even the way it is now. So that's very cool, but it's on sale for 1 or 2 more days. What's today? Saturday the 28th. It says till the end of 2024, so I would get it if you want it for 25% off. It's well worth it. And there is going to be an update coming that's going to have character limits in the amount of I think character limits and line limits. I think both. I haven't confirmed that, but I think both. Ruben says, where can I see different options to vote? You just vote in your comments. Just vote in your comments. You can vote with A, B, C, or D, but you have to give it, if you vote something, you have to give us reasons. You have to give us reasons. Then when we get to the end of this, I'm going to tell you my vote, what I think. A 5-vote rating is really great, but then again, Philip and Hodges really do great job. I am, however, not interested. It's only transcribed in English. At the moment, I need Danish and German as well. They have a second plugin called, what is it called, that takes care of that for you. Here's a second plugin that takes care of that. This one's not on sale. Caption Translator. Translate captions in Final Cut Pro. Oh, I'm sorry. It is on sale. Introductory pricing, 15% off until the end of 2024. So it is on sale. That must be the introductory pricing. I am not sure. So this does exactly what you're talking about. It translates to different languages. I'm not sure. Caption Translator takes the native language captions and translates them to up to 20 different languages in one batch. So there you go. This takes care of that issue that you were just talking about. And it's also on sale, 15% off until the end of 2024, which is approaching fast. I just bought them both this day, bought them both today. Fantastic. Let me just check on something here. I think let me just see. We're going to have a special guest on shortly. We're going to have a guest, and we're going to talk about all kind of good stuff. Would be happy if could find Logic Pro tracks, get buddy friend with rolls. I'm not sure. David says, what's Richard's grade? You have to wait for a little bit. I have, well, each category, let me pull that up. Each category yes, you get to vote on, give a grade on all those. Get the grade on all those. And like I said, we're going to have a guest on in a few minutes. I'm not going to tell you who it is. You have to wait and see. Not Santa Claus. Santa Claus is here. We got another guest, another Final Cut Pro coming on here in a few minutes. There we go. Excellent, excellent. So what do I think about Final Cut Pro? Well, for 2024, I think it's done a really good job. They've done a really good job, but there's been long spaces between the updates. For example, we got 10.7.1 a year ago in December. 10.7 came out in November. 10.7.1 came out in December. From January all the way till June, nada, nothing. There was no updates for 6 months. Okay? It's kind of, they should have put an update out, I think, between that space, but they didn't. Then we got 10.8 on June the 19th. We got 10.8. So it went from 10.7, 6 months later, it jumped to 10.8. Then we got 10.8.1, 6 weeks later. That also took a little longer than normal. And then we got, finally, we got Final Cut Pro 11 over there at the Creative Summit, which I said back in May of last year, that's what was going to happen. Last year in May, I said, okay, we're at 10.7.1. 10.8 is going to come out in a month or two. So it came out 6 weeks, 7 weeks later. But in May, I said it's going to jump to 10.8, and then it's going to jump to Final Cut Pro 11 by the Creative Summit, and that's exactly what happened. That is exactly what happened. Don't tell, is Tim Cook a member of the Final Cut Pro team? No. If Tim Cook came on, he had to wear a mask. We couldn't have him on. We have to disguise his voice and put a mask. And no, it's not somebody from the Final Cut Pro team. They cannot do these. They can't come on and talk. They can't represent Apple on a live stream like this. Caption Translator is unfortunately not on sale in Denmark and does not yet support Danish, but if it does in a future update, I'll definitely buy it. I mostly explain German sentences in Danish. I would say send an email to Philip over there at Intelligent Assistance and ask him that question, because my suspicion is that, yes, indeed, it will do exactly what you're asking for in an update. I mean, they have 20 languages and they don't do Danish? That's kind of surprising. Kind of surprising. So it's kind of dreary out here today. What's the temperature? Oh, I got my... Let's see what the temperature is. 45 degrees. 45 degrees is nice. It's a nice temperature. I like it. Let me turn this on, and we'll bring our guest on. Let me do this. Copy link. And we'll do this. And we'll have a guest on in a few minutes. I have a guest on for the end of 2024. So you also can do a miscellaneous grade on something. You can do a miscellaneous grade. I just had a couple of categories, and we'll talk about what I think when we get the guest on, when I get our guest on. And we'll go from there. We had a good Christmas show with Philip and Serena and Brett from Brett FX. And we had a good time was it a week ago? Now, here's the thing. When are we going to get 11.0.1? Obviously, at this point, I'd say we're not going to get it till the week after the New Year's. I mean, I'd be surprised if we got it any time sooner than that. Let me just assign him to this one. go there. Guests in green room. And we're going to do this. Oh, that's not the one. Wait a minute. That's not the one. Let me go back here. 2 up. Here we go. There we are. Now, there we are. Say something. Gabriel.
Richard, how are you doing?
There we go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you, and everybody else can hear you as well.
Well, that's important.
Now, here's the thing. The text on your shirt is in the right orientation. So did you reverse the camera? A lot of times people come on and it's backwards because they don't reverse the camera.
I reversed it. Yeah.
Okay. Because otherwise we go, what does it say? That's your company, right?
Yeah, my company. Yeah.
What was that for? Why is it in quotes?
Well, company of one. So.
Well, okay. Well, that's the same as me. I've been that way for, Final Cut Pro podcast. Oh, there's echo. Hold on a second. Let me, you know what it is? Hold on. I got to get headphones.
Okay.
Thank you for saying that. I forgot about headphones. When I have a guest on, I got to get headphones. So let me pull this up, and then we'll be in good shape. Because I have you on speaker right now, but it's going through my microphone and going back into the live feed. Now, why? I forgot about that. I'm not used to doing that many guests on Saturdays, but I wanted to get you on before the end of the year, Gabriel, because you were also at the Creative Summit, and we had a really, really good time there. And I want to talk to you. Who messed up Who messed these up? So I got a gremlin that snuck in here and tangled these headphones all up. It must have been one of Santa Claus's helpers that snuck in here. Let me see. That goes there. That goes there. That goes there. There we go. Now, let me just go over here for a second. And I'm going to do this. This is going down there. This is going over here. And I'm going to connect up where is my headphone connector thing? Here it is, over here, here. There we go. Now that should be. Now I got to switch one of the other things. I got to switch that to. Say something, Gabriel. Let me see if I can hear you.
I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Okay, I got to switch that over to. Let me see. Here's audio. All right, now say something.
Richard, thanks for having me on.
No, I can't hear it. 1 second. I'm doing something wrong. Oh, I see. Well, I know what I did wrong. Hold on a second. Let's go back to that, and let's go back to this. Now I should hear you. Try it now. Yes. Yes, there you go. Got you in my headphones now. And should we turn that should have got rid of any echo that somebody was complaining about, which I'm glad they told me because I wasn't paying attention. So did you have a good time? I presume you did at the summit?
Yeah, I always have a good time at the summit. It's a great event.
Yeah. So what did you think about the darn presentation that they gave us this year in that theater? It was like magical, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was definitely the best one we've ever had. They put a lot of work into that presentation. I
agree. It absolutely was. And when we first got there, because I've heard about the Developers Center before from Philip and Greg, because I told them, I said, well, I guess you've been to the Final Cut to the Apple campus lots of times. He goes, nope, never have been until this Creative Summit last year. They've only been to the Developers Center. Now, I thought the Developer Center was a lot further away, not walking distance, where we left the Developer Center and then we left. And then we walked out, and then we walked across the street, and we're at the Apple campus. It was really, really cool. Because when we first got to the Developer Center, I'm thinking, where are these buses going? This is not Apple Park. And I'm thinking, what? Did they change again on us? But, of course, it was a surprise, and they did Fantastic job. That theater was so cool. They kept us simmering. You know, it didn't like we walked in and then the presentation was right there. We walked in and then 20 minutes, there's music and there's things on the screen. And then they started.
Did you notice how many cameras they had set up? They were recording the thing.
A lot of cameras. And they've never, well, I can't say never. I don't remember all the infinite loop ones, but usually they don't record.
Yeah.
I don't know if they did it. If it, yeah. So we might see that at some point, right?
Well, they did before 11 came out. I think it was the previous update. They started releasing a couple of videos for Final Cut on their YouTube channel, which to me sounds like marketing. So maybe something's been lifted. Maybe they're, you know.
Final Cut Pro marketing? What is that? What are those words don't go together? They don't go together. Not up to this point.
They do market through, you know, the people who are, you know, Final Cut 11 comes out and the people who have their tutorials ready the minute it's released. That's kind of their version of marketing. You know, they're working through the community, which I think is powerful because it might mean more coming from actual users than just from the company itself. But I like to see it attacked on both fronts. So. Oh,
absolutely. Now, the important question about the summit is, did you get one of Bradley's donuts? That's the most important question.
I took advantage of more than one. Yeah.
I just came downstairs from upstairs. I had coffee in my room and I probably had a banana or something. And I came down and I went over to talk to him. He goes, "You gotta get one of those donuts. You gotta get one of those donuts." I mean, it was fantastic. It was like still warm. It was still
crispy
warm.
in the right ways and moist in other ways. It was a very good donut.
There's two problems with the summit. Number one is Bradley has to match those donuts next year.
Yeah.
And the Final Cut Pro team has to match their presentation at the Developer Center theaters. There's no going back from that, right?
No.
Perfect setup. Go to the Developer Center, you see a professional presentation, and then we walk across to Apple campus. And they let us post pictures of the outside of Apple Park this time, which was a nice little bonus, because before they've been more restrictive.
The last time I remember pictures and sharing being allowed was, I think it was 2017? It was when we got the color tools. And they let us, and we got to see the new iMac Pro, and they let us take photos and post it publicly, which was kind of amazing.
Well, they in 2016, 17, and 18, they let us take pictures at the presentation room, screenshots not of the employees, and they let us post to social media. 2019, no. The Mac Pro, we went to a room where they had these Mac Pros and they had guards in there. They had guards in the presentation room, and you weren't allowed to take any photographs or anything. It was just like a ghost town. It was really strange compared to the 2016, 17, and 18. And then, of course, nothing in 2020 and 2021 except online. And then, 2023 was the first one, right? Last year, a year ago, and then 2024, where we had the in-person ones again. 2022 was the tour, where they went around to different cities.
Yeah, that wasn't that great. I went to the one in Chicago. There were like 10 people there.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, that's why they never made it to Europe. It wasn't. But that wasn't
in person. It obviously costs a lot more because you have to travel and you have to put people up in a hotel. But right. It's worth every penny in my opinion.
It
not
is.
Just for the session, but for getting to know all the people you see online all these years and forging personal connections and professional connections. I highly recommend it.
And the presentation. So this year, highlights are Michael Cioni. He talked for 90 minutes without a teleprompter. I thought he had notes. He kept looking at his iPhone. I mean, occasionally. I thought it was notes. Bradley said it was to trigger the slideshow. That's what he was looking at, PowerPoint or whatever.
Well, he's a very polished and practiced presenter. It wouldn't surprise me if that was just to advance his keynote presentation.
Right. And he's a rock star. He's an absolute rock star. I mean, 90 minutes, just impromptu talking to an audience, to a live audience. Really, really good. And then Fitness Plus was really a surprise. Now, I taped their whole presentation. I'm not planning on putting the whole thing online, but I will do a couple of segments because first off, they use Final Cut Pro.
Yep.
Okay? And they use it for their entire presentation. They do it except for audio. They send audio out to Pro Tools, which everybody does. I mean, at a certain level. They use Final Cut Pro for everything, media management, and they had all those. They said that the biggest, something about the biggest studio or biggest robotic studio in the world, something along those lines. And I didn't see anybody manning a camera. I think everything was robotic from what I saw. They were, but robots on stands, and rolling around, not just robotics from overhead. And that's incredible. That was an incredible presentation. That was really good. And of course, Bradley Olson had a really good presentation. He was in a couple, but that one he was with
Cinema Therapy.
Cinema Therapy, that's what it was. Yeah. Yeah, I taped. I couldn't get to everybody. But I tried to get a little bit of everybody, and then some of the ones I recorded the entire. I did Michael Cioni's entire one, but I knew he was filming it himself because he had two cameras over my right shoulder. So I knew he was filming. I knew he put out the entire one, but I just wanted a couple clips. So I filmed his one, and I filmed the Fitness Plus. And the one about there's a couple of other ones that I filmed, the whole ones, and I filmed segments of everybody else. And then, of course, we did the live stream. Now, what did you think about the live expo in the lobby versus in the past we had it in the back room?
I think I preferred that portion in a separate room.
Okay.
Than in the lobby. Just because it's a little more, you have more space to roam and to see more of the vendors, whereas in the lobby you have other hotel guests kind of coming through, and it's a little more distracting.
I didn't catch that. Next time we got to make sure they don't take Bradley's Donuts. I didn't even think about that. Some guest coming down and, hey, well, I'm going to grab one of these.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of things. Back when they first started, 2016, 2017, they used to have 3 tiers going on at one time, 3 different sessions. So they divided the big room into 2 small rooms, and then they had the back room. I'm not even sure. I thought we went in a different place, different from outside in. But they had 3 different ones, and then they'd combined the big room for the expo. But this time they didn't want to, tear down and set back up, and that's a lot of work. So they just said, well, this is the big room, and then they did the expo in the lobby. But I thought the expo was good. I mean, I thought I still enjoyed it a lot. And Michael Cioni was there, of course. Greg and Philip were there, with demonstrating their I guess their new plugin for the most part. And even Sam Messman was there with a move. Did you catch any of his thing? Any of his presentation? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I was pleasantly surprised that Sam was there. That's who I've known a very long time, and he's the one that got me into the Creative Summit back in 2016. So that was interesting. Sam was there, and because he didn't present last year. Sam didn't. He was there, but he did not present. So that was cool. So what were some of your favorites presentations?
I mean, I'd have to remember what I even saw. I think I saw Jen Jager's one of her motion trainings. She's a great presenter.
She's another rock star, yeah.
She's very good. What was his name? Daniel, I forgot his name. He does the crazy motion. I'm going to look him up.
Okay.
What's his name? Daniel Robert Cohn. He does some insane. He did this piece a few years ago called "The World's Gone Nuts," where he filmed with his wife squirrels in their backyard, and he keyed them out of the background, and kind of did this big sort of social commentary, political piece. But just some of the most in-depth, layered, creative use of motion I've ever seen.
Is that right?
Yeah, oh yeah,
because
definitely.
because I mean, you're talking Mark Spencer, you're talking Jen Jager, and all these other people that are really great with motion. And this guy had like a step up from that, perhaps.
Well, I don't want to say it's a step up. It's just it's a we all create different types of things with our tools, and we have different projects. I mean, a lot of us are just using motion to create animated backgrounds and lower thirds and show
Right.
packages.
Right.
I think the thing with Daniel is he might not know motion as well as me or Mark and Steve or Jen, but I think that lack of knowledge of certain parts of the app, he kind of can fall into traps, which leads him to explore and kind of push things to push things further. So I think having limitations, if I don't mean that harshly, but it causes you to kind of stumble your way around and then uncover new things that you might not have otherwise. So, I mean, however it actually is, like his work speaks for itself. It's really impressive.
And I think he edited in motion. He edited like movies in motion, right?
Yeah.
That's what he was doing. I remember that now, because I don't think of editing in motion. I just think, like you said, make special graphics, make this, do this, do this. But he actually,
it's fully realized. I mean, motion isn't truly 3D, but like 3D worlds, many layers deep, animated cameras. I mean, pretty much every tool within motion, it seems like he used at some point. So,
okay.
Yeah, he's very
Yeah.
good, and I use motion daily, so I really appreciate what he did there.
Yeah. I use Logic daily, almost daily, and then Final Cut Pro. Motion I get into sometimes, but I just don't have the time to get involved in yet. I mean, plus I use DaVinci Resolve and LumaFusion, both of them. But I don't use the Fusion page in DaVinci Resolve, and I don't use Fairlight even in DaVinci Resolve because I have Logic and Final Cut. So, got to limit somehow. I mean,
Well, you are now friends with pretty much all of the motion trainers. So, if you ever wanted to learn,
well, I do want to. It's the time,
yeah,
right? If I have a question, I belong to the motion group on Facebook, and I can ask questions there. As a matter of fact, I think I asked the very first question when that group first came online, and then I deleted it because I found out the answer. And somebody said, "Hey, what'd you delete? That was the very first question in this group." But I didn't know. I didn't realize that. But I found the answer. I researched it and found the answer. Interesting that motion had a scrolling timeline all these years. People perhaps don't know that.
yeah, it does. It's not quite what we got in Final Cut, but
No, not exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So, what did you think about? Let's talk about Final Cut Pro 11 because we're doing a report card on Final Cut Pro today for different people. They have, I like to give the community the opportunity to talk live because I always say this: the Final Cut Pro team does watch this. They don't sit down in a room, with Tim Cook and watch it, but I mean, different members will tune in and watch it. Which I want to say, Final Cut Pro team, the best. The last summit was fantastic. And Final Cut Pro 11. Let's talk about Final Cut Pro 11. So,
Yeah.
big ticket items. That magnetic mask is way more than I thought it was going to be. I've never done rotoscoping. I've done very little. But I presume you have?
I have, and I hope never to do it again. It's not great. The first time I ever rotoscoped was, probably 18 years ago. It was on interlaced footage.
Wow.
And there was a parade that was being filmed, and there was a woman walking towards the camera, and like the parade behind her, she was pushing a cart with a plastic bag and a hat that was flopping in the wind. And I thought, well, why don't I put the title behind her? So let me rotoscope. But it was like a 12-second shot, and like 29:9:7 interlaced, and it was, probably 720p at best.
Right.
So at any given frame, I could barely tell even what was her and what was the background. I spent literal days on it, like 12-hour days on it.
Exactly.
And it looked pretty good at the end, and I was the only one who noticed I even did it. So
I'll be darned.
yeah, most people aren't that attentive, but you look at the magnetic mask, which I thought would be decent, but I thought DaVinci Resolve gets more fanfare for their tools like that, but I'm kind of blown away by how good it is, really.
I am
You
too.
see some examples online where people they try to do it quickly, and you'll see some jagged edges still, and then they kind of just say, well, this is perfect, and it's clearly not. But the tool set is there to allow you to make it perfect.
Right.
You can keep refining. I mean, I've been testing that tool, and like for color correcting, and I mean, kudos to the team. I think it's their best implemented AI tool in the app so far.
I think it's really, really good. I mean, I was surprised at how good it is, and it's really good. So, because like I said, I haven't done much. I didn't have the patience to manually rotoscope things, and even though there's something in DaVinci Resolve that I've never got into it, so I didn't know. I haven't been fooled with their version of it. But we got a nice comment here from, says, Philip has already replied. He said, it's up to Apple to add Danish to the language framework. Great service on Philip's part, of course. Of course. Philip and Greg are great. I've known them for years.
Yeah. Yep.
So I didn't know that it's up to Apple to add Danish, because he wanted to add, he would get the translator plug-in, but it needs to be in Danish. And
I think intelligent assistants, I think they're plugging into the OS, language infrastructure. So if it's not available, it's not available.
Doesn't that seem odd that Danish isn't available in Mac OS? I mean, it seems kind of.
Well, when they roll out these features, there's like a subset of languages first. A lot of times, it works well for me because I live in the States, and for you, but it's like English first, and then eventually they start to add more languages as time goes on. So I'm sure they'll get Danish eventually.
Oh, you're saying Danish to Final Cut. I'm talking about Danish to the Mac OS.
Well, but it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like if it's not in Mac OS, it won't be in Final Cut. So like as soon as the OS gets it, Final Cut will have it, I'm sure.
Okay. So we talked about the magnetic mask. I think virtually 95% of the people really, really like it. There might be a few people who use something more advanced that say it needs features, perhaps. I don't know.
If you work in the VFX, I mean, it's like, if you're a high-end motion graphics artist and you're using After Effects and, other 3D tools, you might look down on motion a bit because, this is like your bread and butter. It's what you use 24/7.
Sure.
But it's the same thing here. If you're in VFX, you're going to want the perfect pixel perfect outline. Like this isn't necessarily to replace VFX houses. But for 90% of what 90% of us do, right. 90% of the time, it's more than good enough. And I think the same thing about motion for motion graphics. So
speaking of motion, since you're a motion guy and you like motion and use it, I understand from one aspect the advancement of motion versus the advancement of Final Cut and Logic. So Logic and Final Cut are definitely the top tier pro apps, because they get bigger updates, they get more updates, they get higher numbers. Motion's still stuck at 5. How many years has it been at 5? A long time, right?
When was I born? I'm not sure. A long time.
Exactly. It's been a long time.
I kind of joke among certain people that it's kind of ironic that the app is called Motion because it's pretty static. It doesn't really get updated very much. And again, I don't, by default, I don't even like software. Like Final Cut is my favorite piece of software, followed only by Motion. And then there's like 10 miles and then the next piece of software. So I love Motion and I love Final Cut. And that's the reason, if I'm ever critical of them, it's because I love them.
Right. No, of course.
So I just want to see them advance more. And Motion, every couple of years, maybe gets a new filter or something, and that's about it. There are a number of long-standing bugs I'd like to see fixed. I'd like to see some advancements in certain areas.
They didn't get the magnetic mask, did they, this time?
No, in fact, I mean, Motion generally keeps up to speed with Final Cut in terms of the version to a point. So, I mean, we went from 10.81 to 11 for Final Cut, but Motion just went from 5.8 to 5.9. It didn't jump to 6. So I'm wondering what this jump to 6 is going to be. I've been hurt in the past, so I'm not going to expect a major update, but it would be nice to see something worthy of a version.
So here we got a comment here for another grade. So this person gave it C. Lots is missing still, but that's just typical of how Apple does updates with everything. Next year, it'll be new features that's been available for years elsewhere. Once again, this is for people to express their opinion. I'm not agreeing or disagreeing. I certainly wouldn't give it a C. That's that's way too low for what Final Cut is, in my opinion. But
I reject the notion that things are quote unquote missing. You know what I mean? Because like, Premiere might get something, Resolve might get something, 30 years later, Avid might get the same thing. But like, it doesn't mean that the other NLE is missing it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but
because you're editing stuff, but then, over time, like editors are expected to do a lot more than just cut. So we're expected to do more tracking and more color and more sound. And so in that sense, the NLE does a lot more than editing, So, where do you draw the line between, well, now I'm a compositor, now I'm a VFX artist, now I'm a motion graphics artist, now I'm a professional sound mixer. So like missing, I don't know, it's kind of a reach, I think.
Well, but as I mentioned before I started, I mean, text-based editing, come on. Everybody's had it for 2 years now. And I was kind of expecting 11, and it doesn't mean it's not coming in 11. It just wasn't at the initial launch of 11. And the interesting thing is, once Philip and Greg's updates their plugin to allow character limits and line limits when they're, Caption Animator, which is supposed to be coming, I'll use that more than jumping to DaVinci Resolve for transcription, because DaVinci Resolve, you can do all kind of customizations and save it as a preset and just pull it up each time after they animate. But you can't, in DaVinci Resolve, you can do text-based editing. Final Cut, you can use the timeline index, which is a little bit clunkier, but it's still, you can still get to each place that you need to get to cut or whatever. So it's a couple of extra steps. But it just seems to me, now that they got transcribe audio, that's perhaps the next step is text-based editing.
The two things that, again, I won't say missing, but the two things I would like to see that they could use. The first is, I think, was a misstep, because when they pre-announced the transcribe to captions, the wording, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like, captions for your social media. Well, like, that is what we got. We did get captions, but anybody cutting for social media knows that they're actually talking about animated titles.
Exactly.
Which I think is horrible, because when I watch videos like that, I find I'm just looking at the words jumping around. I'm not looking at the content. But that is where the industry goes. So it's kind of a missed opportunity. I'm sure that's coming, and that is what
I think it is too. Yes.
But the other thing, which would be much more useful to me, is actual text-based editing. Like, we need to be able to transcribe clips in the browser upon import.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes,
so in that
absolutely.
sense, that wouldn't use the timeline index, because it wouldn't be in the timeline yet. It would be some other.
It's one of those workarounds. When I complained about the scrolling timeline for like 11, 12 years, people kept saying, well, use Chris Hawking's
command post.
I said, I want it native. Yeah. I want it native in Final Cut.
There are certain things that should be native for sure. Yeah. Like collaboration.
So anyway, they did get it. They did get it to me. 12, which is, look, I was right in the front row. I loved that last year when we got that. I mean, after all these years.
I haven't turned off the scrolling timeline since I got it.
I haven't either.
I never thought I wanted it. And then once I had it, I was like, oh, this is, even just for the fact that if you turn it off, your waveforms won't redraw as it scrolls. So you need it on just to see your waveforms continuously redraw. So for that alone, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. I use it. I leave it on too as well.
Because half the time I'm editing, I'm not even looking at the picture. I'm looking at the waveform. So
exactly. But the weird thing was, after all these years, the playhead would scroll off the screen. I said, "What? Wait a minute. At least page, I use paging sometimes, because it depends on how long the timeline is. If the timeline is short, I don't need it to scroll. I need it to page. If it's shorter, but at least do that. But that never made sense to me all these years. But they got the message. They got Well,
they've done this before, but I think the scrolling timeline is a good indication of kind of how they work, which is we might have to wait longer than some of the competition for certain things, but they tend to get it right, like really well, and this is like the best implementation of scrolling timeline I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. I don't know the other ones except for the weird thing is in DaVinci Resolve, it's scrolling in the cut page, but it's not in the. No, it is scrolling now. They added that. Turn it on, turn it off in the edit page, so they do have it now. Listen, I interviewed Grant Petty last year at NAB. He's such a great guy. I mean, he's just so friendly, just out there with the people. And I'd say, can I get a selfie? But I record video. I don't record still. So I had my camera on a monopod and holding it. No, on the this. This is what I use, the Insta360. So, and it has an extension rod. So I had that, and I said, can I get a selfie with you? And he goes, sure. And then I'm recording 4K video facing back towards us, and he saw that. He just kept on talking and talking and talking. So, I got like a 5 or 6 minute interview with him. So I really expect Resolve to get some form of a magnetic timeline. That's what I was going to say. I would expect that. I kind of expect that to happen at some point. People, once again, people said for years, I don't want a scrolling timeline. Well, you can turn it off. Yeah. Same with the magnetic timeline. You could turn it off, but if people, would like that, I mean, I kind of would in Resolve. That would kind of be neat.
Yeah, but I think what would happen is as soon as Resolve gets a magnetic timeline, if that ever happens, it'll get all this praise and press, and then all the Final Cut people will be like, why weren't you praising that when we had it for the last 13 years, That's
the nature of the internet, though, isn't it? Yeah. It's just the way things work. So it says Danish is supported in the OS. It's the translation framework that does not support it. There you go. The translation framework. See, I didn't know there's a distinction, but apparently it is. Hello, it takes time, but at least it works better sooner. I'm not sure what that means. Takes time, works better. I think you're talking about Final Cut in general, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay, here's, this is, I've edited for 24 years. Simple audio mixing is literally missing. That should be a feature.
I can't
no argument for me.
At all.
No argument, no.
My number one request is a rules-based mixer. Like, yes, I understand, and every time I compound clip my sequence and I, expand my audio lanes or my sub-rolls and I apply everything to that. And then if you want to make an edit, you have to step inside and then you no longer hear your mix.
Right.
Nobody will convince me that's anything but a workaround. So until
it is.
And maybe even rules-based mixer is the wrong thing to say. Like however they envision this, just give us that.
Yes, absolutely.
Badly need it.
Yes. So that's those are my top two: text-based editing and a roles-based mixer. Just to do a plug-in insert, instead of you can apply it to. No, I don't want to go in and out of a compound clip. I want to apply it to a track. Drop-down insert.
Well, plus,
you have
when you create the compound clip, then it's another piece of media you have to track in your browser. And then, you have to get into referencing new compound clips. And, if you know what you're doing, it's not a big deal, but it's just a bunch of extra steps. And again, it's, for me, it's the same argument as why I want to open up a compound clip in place.
Yes.
If you use After Effects,
Absolutely.
you're using pre-comps and pre-comps and pre-comps, and then you step inside and then you're editing out of context. It's the same thing.
It's exactly correct.
Let us hear it in real time in the context of the final piece.
Absolutely. Now, what about multicam collapsing multicams? How would Final Cut do that? Because I keep hearing about that as well. Something that people want.
I used to think that's what I wanted as well. And Wes Plate is working on a new app that he did talk about at the summit, where you can finalize or collapse your multicam clip.
Okay.
I beta tested an early version. There's been some updates since then. And that could be really helpful. What I think instead, what I would really want though is, last year I was working with a director who liked to retime everything, and all the footage was always multicam. And you can retime multicam, but you can't with optical flow or the machine learning, which are the only two quality levels I think are acceptable. So if they would just let us retime multicams, then I wouldn't have any need to collapse anymore.
Well, you're saying, go ahead.
If you're speeding it up, I need you to speed this to 112%. Well, okay, you can do that, but not with optical flow or machine learning. So
I see. I
had to render out the clips and bring them back into Final Cut to the regular clips. Now, if people are round tripping to Resolve or other finishing apps, that's where the collapsed multicam would be helpful in those workflows, because the multicam comes through to Resolve, I think, but nothing else. So there are different arguments for different workflows, but
yeah. Well, there you go. That's perfect. So we had the magnetic mask. We talked about transcribe audio. What else happened in 11? What other things?
I like some of the little workflow stuff that isn't going to send out fireworks on the internet, but things like hide clip when you create a multicam. It'll hide the source clips. Those are
Yeah.
little time savers. The keyboard shortcut to jump around different columns in the browser.
Wait a
So if you're
minute.
adding data.
I missed that.
I forgot the shortcut, but like you can now, say you've got a bunch of clips and you've got to tab through the browser to add, camera name or camera angle.
Right.
There's a new shortcut that allows you to very quickly jump back and forth and fill
Oh,
those
okay.
out without having to ever click on a new field.
Okay.
So it's a little thing, but it saves a ton of time if you're.
But did they show us that at the presentation? Because I completely missed that. Did you?
I don't know
or
if
did
they
you?
showed it, but it was mentioned at some point. I know.
Okay.
And it's in their release notes, I think.
Okay.
What else? There's the ability to zoom a timeline vertically is a really nice thing.
And I thought you were going to talk about this when you said shortcuts, the ability to move clips up and down the timeline with the keyboard shortcut.
Yeah, that's one I haven't used as much lately, but it's very useful.
Yeah. The different
You
lanes.
can command arrow to select clips. We've had this for a little while. All clips in the same roll. You can use command up, down, left, right to select those clips. Now, I think it's option left arrow, then you can restack and rechange the stacking order of things.
Right. You can actually
is
move
great.
clips up and down without, clicking them and dragging, because you
Yep.
get off left or right or whatever. So I like that a lot. Good old mute button. I'm getting
useful.
a little Christmas cough here. I've had it for a few weeks. So sometimes it's little things. I mean, those, I definitely use the shortcuts to move clips up and down in the timeline. I do that all the time. And like you said, vertical zoom. I don't. Did anybody have that on? I didn't have that on any list. I've never even thought about that. That's one of the things that they do. Sometimes they just say, "Now here's this." Nobody asked for it.
I know it's been requested. It wasn't something
Okay.
I asked for, but now I've used it a bunch, and it's very quick and handy.
Okay.
There's a new keyboard shortcut now to show horizon. It's a little buggy right now. I'm hoping they'll fix that maybe next week. But
You mean to show horizon in the viewer?
yeah,
Okay,
Yep.
that's like a overlay or something.
yeah, it's just like a yellow plus sign basically, so you can line things up. And then you can add a shortcut, I believe, for like the title save, which I don't use as often. And then I believe you can add a custom shortcut for like a custom overlay, but that's not working either. I filed a bug report last week. But
So title safe is really for broadcast television, right? Not for social media for the most part.
well, social media, I don't think it matters really, because if you
That's what I mean.
look at any amount of social media, they don't really care about any standard or convention at all.
No,
But
they
I do
don't.
think, like title safe is for television, but I think it's useful still on the web because it still
Okay.
gives you a framework, within which to keep, graphics to a certain
If you
point.
want-
Or
yeah.
what if somebody watches your YouTube show on their TV? Then the title
that's
safe starts
true.
to matter again. So
That's
I do
true.
think they're. But if I understand correctly, I think the title safe in Final Cut is out of date, whereas in Motion it's correct. They're different sizes.
Right. So from over there on X platform, we have I Know Buddy. He comes in every week. Final Cut Pro 7, you can adjust the inspector properties of an element inside a compound clip from outside of it to see the results as you tweak them. I didn't know that. That's
I don't
interesting.
remember that, but that's what I was talking about being able to,
Okay.
like, how we can hit Control V right now to expand
Yes.
to see like, video keyframes or audio.
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't we have a shortcut that just allows us to see that compound clip contents in the timeline?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I make fun of the keyframing in Final Cut Pro all the time. I say it's like keyframing on an Etch-a-Sketch for people that know what that is. But the one thing I do like is the animation lane in Final Cut for moving a group of keyframes left and right.
Yeah, if you could just
Or even
right click and
deleting them.
choose
Yeah.
Bezier.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
simple,
Exactly. Yeah, I like to see some of that in the viewer. A more sophisticated keyframing timeline or whatever in the viewer, we much, even if it's a drop down or something in the viewer rather than a timeline, who the heck knows? So one thing I like about Motion, I like Motion a lot. I like their HUDs, and I wish Final Cut Pro had some of those. So instead of here's the thing, like if I'm in the browser and I right click on a library, and then I got to go all the way over to the 34-inch screen I have to change anything. Rather than right-clicking in place, and a little HUD drops right there, or a drop-down menu. Let me adjust the properties right in place. Same as the timeline. Going to the timeline, then going back at the inspector. Timeline, inspector. No, I want to do it right in the timeline, right in place. I love that because Motion has some of that stuff. They have the HUDs.
It has a HUD. It's called the HUD.
Okay.
I generally hate floating windows because they're always covering up. It seems like wherever I need to click, it's always covered up by that HUD. Doesn't matter where I put it.
Okay.
In Motion, it works well because it contains like a subset of the most common parameters you're likely to adjust. And then if you want to get more control, then you go to the inspector. But there are a few things in the HUD that you can only do in the HUD. So it has its use. I wouldn't be opposed to that being in Final Cut. I can just choose not to use it, but I can.
Or a keyboard shortcut, open and close it. That's what I mean. I don't have it open all the time, but
even
a right click.
F7. Yeah.
Okay. Even a right click. Click on a library in the browser. Right click. Get the properties. Do it there instead of here, back and forth, back and forth. Too much of that. That's either a HUD or just a drop-down menu for something. Just the basic features. You don't have to have every single feature, but the basic ones. And then in the timeline, right-click on a title and change properties right in the timeline instead of going select inspector. Just right-click and give me a few choices to edit the text, what title, whatever, right there. Now, one of them I really like in Final Cut, the viewer, when you can click on a title in the viewer and change.
Yeah.
And I can't do that in DaVinci Resolve. If you can, maybe you can in Fusion, but I can't. You got to click and then you got to go to the inspector. You got to click and then go to the inspector. I like being able to edit right in the viewer. Now, here's a tip some people might not know. I click on a title in the viewer and then use, what is it when you use the microphone to dictation?
Oh, yeah.
And it works really, really well because I'm not a fast typer, so a lot of times I'll click delete and then just dictate whatever I want, and it goes right in there, and then just I like that.
I don't think I've ever used that one.
Yeah, so here's I'm a professional editor. It makes me laugh when we talk about DaVinci Resolve. I think most use it because it's free. I think 20% of users really know how to use it, especially in terms of something left us in suspense. No, I like DaVinci Resolve. If I didn't have Final Cut, that would be my main editor on a Mac, for sure.
He continued. He says, especially in terms of color grading and audio mixing, for me, it's still a software for real professionals. With Final Cut plugins is enough for most editing. Again, I don't disagree with him either. I think I'll say most of the people online who rave about Resolve or complain about Final Cut either don't know either one very well. I mean, you can tell by the types of questions they have online. So they don't even know what they're missing.
Right. No, I don't really pay attention to people complaining about DaVinci or complaining about Final Cut. I mean, when Final Cut first came out, I ignored the people. Oh, I'm leaving Apple, never coming back, and all this. Oh, go ahead. I couldn't care less. I was at the National Archives. I was using Final Cut Pro 7.0.3, the original version, on our Mac. It was a Mac Pro. Yeah, it was a Mac Pro. I had up in the studio. And there you go, Mac Final Cut Studio. Back in the days when we had to pay $1,000 and got this bunch of CDs like that. And but as soon as 10 came out, I got it. I used it when I could. I couldn't use it in everything. It didn't have multicam to 10.0.3, which was a big deal. And I used it when I could because I just wanted to learn it. Everybody's starting at ground zero with 10, except for a couple people who, had the beta, but most everybody's starting from the beginning. So I just kept plugging away. And of course, nowadays, Final Cut 7, what are you talking about? But I mean, I still have it. I still have Final Cut 7.0.3 on my original MacBook Pro, which is about an inch thick. I have Final Cut Pro 7.0.3 and Final Cut Pro 10.0.0 on that laptop because that was the transition period. I had both of them on there.
Yeah.
So, DaVinci Resolve it really started as a color correction. That's where it really got its started, right? That's because it was it's in a lot of Hollywood studios, wasn't it? DaVinci Color, the color correction portion. And then they started putting all these things in, got Fairlight in, and then they got the editor. And so it's really a robust editor. And I don't know if you remember last year, not this November, but the year before at the Creative Summit, the Final Cut Pro team singled out DaVinci Resolve as being a really good editor. I don't even remember what the context was, but it was at the Q&A, and I was really pleasantly surprised that they did that. I don't know if they were talking about in terms of competition. Yeah.
Apple is a hardware company, and they sell computers to not just Final Cut users, but Premiere Pro editors and Resolve editors. So like, it's not in their best interest to only push Final Cut. Whenever there's like a new press release for a video that comes out, and they're like, oh, they only showed Resolve. It's like, yeah, I'm a Final Cut user. It'd be nice to see a little more Final Cut love, but like, it makes perfect sense why they would demo for other software users. And they do have a partnership with Blackmagic. I mean, they do work pretty well together.
Absolutely.
In fact, I believe Resolve literally runs like a mini version of Final Cut within it, which is why like our turnovers are so clean, relatively speaking. So, no, I have no problem with Resolve at all. I just prefer Final Cut for many reasons, but I have no legitimate complaints against Resolve. It's a really,
I like both of them. As I tell people, it's not a zero-sum game. People say, I don't leave fun. You don't have to leave. You already paid for it. Let it sit around for a while till we get an update that you like, whatever. Keep using whatever you want. You don't got to switch.
Exactly. If I'm working on a project that needs a level of color finesse that I just find I can't achieve in Final Cut, I'll jump to Resolve for that. No big deal. And then I'm back in Final Cut. Like, you don't have to. It's not a war. You don't have to like
exactly. It's not a war. Yeah. People call it the NLE wars. Oh, come on! It's software. It's for God's
because
sake.
They all borrow from each other. They all keep each other on their toes.
I remember.
It's good that we have many of them.
I remember.
I don't like Premiere at all.
I don't either. That's because of Adobe.
I wouldn't shed a tear. But
yeah, that's because of Adobe, not because of Premiere itself. But what was I going to say? We were talking about something. I'll put this comment up. Audio mixer. Audio is so important. I see audio mixer mandatory option to have for me. Absolutely. I think everybody pretty much agrees with that. I mean, audio mixer that's going to be a big one. Now, once again, based on, I predicted it was going to jump from 7 to 8 to 11 last May, but that was based on what Logic Pro did. Logic Pro jumped from 10.8 to 11, so this time Logic Pro got to be 11.1, so maybe next year at the Creative Summit we'll see Final Cut Pro 11.1. That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
So we have one more thing I have already said is a real editor knows how to mount it on any software. If there are missing functions, always find a solution. Sure. Yeah. What I don't like is when people say, oh, do this, you can do, that's a workaround. That's not a native feature, Of course, there's workarounds, but we like to use some native features. At the end of the day,
like if you're working on a job and the client needs something, or it's a personal project and you want to see something, like you'll find a way. And you might not be able to do it with your app without workarounds, but like it doesn't really matter. I mean, before Magnetic Mask, we had rotoscoping, and you would just do it because that's what you had to do. I think a lot of new editors or newer editors lack a lot of context about how things used to work. So they don't really appreciate how kind of easy things have gotten for them,
Right. There's two specific things I want to mention about the presentation we got at the Creative Summit. Number one is they spent a lot of time on Logic Pro. Yeah, length of time longer than Final Cut Pro. I was surprised because all the stuff they showed in Logic Pro was for musicians. The drummers, the keyboard players, almost the reverb.
The reverb one, if you could just put that plugin in Final Cut, that would be amazing for dialogue mixing.
Right, but I mean, that's really a musical thing. It's not an editing specific thing. I'm just saying, I was surprised at how much time they spent on Logic, and they spent a lot of time on the musical aspects, which, being a musician, I appreciate. But I'm looking around and saying, most of these people, do they even... Are they going to use a drummer or a bass player or a keyboard, whatever? The reverb is pretty neat. But anyway, and the other thing I want to mention is that caught me off. It was kind of a surprise. Is Bill Davis did his Final Cut Pro presentation. And at the very end, he does a Steve Jobs and says, oh, one more thing. B-Raw is coming to Final Cut Pro. You couldn't have let off with that? As much as I've heard B-Raw in Final Cut. And it's just like, wow, that was a very, very pleasant surprise, because people kept saying, oh, they're never going to have it, never going to have it. And I said, I doubt. I mean, they worked, Blackmagic and Apple worked together for years on all kinds of stuff, so.
They did, and I know a lot of people have tried to throw Apple under the bus for the not having the support, but I can just ask, like, can you edit ProRes RAW in Resolve? Right.
They both of them have to do it. I don't use ProRes RAW, although I use Apple Log all the time, shooting on my iPhone, and I use Log from my DJI Action camera 4. The 5. I use that. They have a version of Log, and then since Blackmagic camera app allows you to shoot in ProRes Log in HEVC, I use that. That's what I use typically. I don't need ProRes HQ on my iPhone, because my 1 terabyte drive is going to fill up like overnight. Like in a minute.
I bought my camera, it's a Z-Cam, because it records ProRes RAW. So I'm recording, in hindsight, 5.6K ProRes RAW. Sounds really good until you realize how quickly you fill up your hard drives with a 1 hour interview. Right.
Exactly. Now, I use Log all the time. It's just a better version. I mean, not all the time, 80% of the time. If I'm just filming something quick, I don't care. I'll just hit the Final Cut Pro camera. So one of the things that I showed the guy from the team about, the guy that's in charge of Final Cut on the iPad, he's also in charge of Final Cut camera. And I showed 4 or 5 people over and over. I said, where's the guy in charge of the camera? Where's the guy? And I pulled up my camera, and I pulled up the native camera app, and I hit the record button, and I switched all the cameras and lenses while you're recording live. I said, you'd have to get this in your Final Cut camera app. I mean, I don't know why Apple has it. You got the Apple app does it, the camera app. It does the best implementation. All it does is it does a quick little zoom, going to different levels. And he just shook his head. Yes, he understood what I was talking about. But I was trying to show people, this is what we need. Then I can use Final Cut camera, because they gave the initially there was no way to preview. If you shot Log, you saw it in Log. There's no way to preview a LUT. Initially, we got that. Now you can preview a LUT. The built-in one, but at least that's a start. And the other one was record Log in HEVC, because it's just, I don't want to record on my phone in ProRes HQ. I'm sorry, I just don't want it. So that was another good thing. But I like Log a lot. RAW, I'm not that familiar with. My Lumix S5 Mark II X exports RAW via HDMI. So if I go to an Atomos recorder, I can record ProRes Log, and if I go to a Blackmagic recorder, I can record B-RAW, because it outputs RAW. But
RAW is, by design, it's more forgiving, because it's, it's skipping all the sensor, it's just the raw data from the sensor. But as long as you're half paying attention to what you're doing, Log is more than good enough. Just watch your highlights and your shadows, and you're good. Right.
So. It's exposing for Log, is still they say overexposed by 1 stop or 2 stops, but that's a little bit tricky.
But that's just shooting 101 anyway. Like, whether you're shooting, a baked-in profile or Log, like, you still have to mind your exposure. So
yes, that's true.
Not really a special thing.
Absolutely. So we have, I remember Mills Core, he says, I remember time when DaVinci was very expensive. Why did it become mainstream, especially with a free version? Well, it's $299. I bought it years ago. I got the studio version. They're like Final Cut. They don't have, there's been no further charge at this point for, updates and stuff.
And Final Cut, same thing. We mentioned it a little while ago. It was, it was $1,000, and now it's $299. So
yep, absolutely.
Same progress.
So that's the one thing is DaVinci once again got over Final Cut. They got a free version rather than just a 90-day free trial. I mean, that's nice. People can. What I tell people is this: I said, if you're starting out, number 1, try out the 90-day version of Final Cut. Number 2, download the free version of DaVinci Resolve. Start with those 2. Neither one of them cost you money. See what you like better. Check out the communities. I mean, the Final Cut community is a really, really great community. It seems to be very helpful. There's a couple of snarky people every once in a while I run into, but I ignore them. And
everybody has moody days, so
yeah, that's true. Some people have it baked in, so it's their profile or whatever. So let's since we're talking about grades for Final Cut, so I have. Let me pull. So as far as generally grading Final Cut as far as their update cycle over 2024, what kind of a grade would you give them?
let me preface this by saying, like, it's like, rating a movie. Is this movie 5 star? Like, if you give all your favorite movies 5 stars, then something that's really exceptional, there's no other grade to give it. So, like, I'm not going to give something an A+ unless it's mind blowing. So just keep that in mind.
I agree. I agree 100%. I see people all the time. This is the best. This is the best. This. Well, everything is the best to you. It's just like, can't
exactly.
you? Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%.
It has to be really, really,
but not the updates, but just the frequency. I mean, how do they do enough?
I guess in this last year, I was going to say C, but I guess this year compared to, say, last year maybe, or the year before, I'd maybe give it a B. I mean, okay. It's encouraging. Like, I want to say C just to kind of pull back and not be too much of a Final Cut fanboy, but and I'm, we're both jaded because we both go to the summit. We're we're kind of intentionally crazy about this ecosystem, so we're a little biased.
Yeah. But I would say the first half of the year last year was a C for sure, because there was no update for 6 months. There was nothing at NAB. There was no news on Final Cut we got an update in December, 10.7.1, which was a bug fix. Nothing January, February, March, April, May until June. There was zero Final Cut Pro innovation, updates, bug fixes, anything, especially around NAB. So I'd give the first half a C. Second half, we got 10.8. Well, not second half. We got 10.8 in the first half, so that was the very end. But in the second half, we got 11. So that was really, really nice. But the frequency, Logic updated a bug fix before Christmas and Final Cut did not. I was kind of thinking, what?
Yeah,
you can't sneak a bug fix in there. Yeah.
Earlier on, I said, I as long as we're patient and we let the team cook and take their time, then when we finally get it, it's generally like really well implemented. At the same time, I'm a human being and I get impatient, and I also get excited with new features, and I tend to incorporate them into my workflow as soon as they're available, whether I thought I needed them or not. So yeah, I would like to see that update frequency increase a bit, for sure. Yeah,
and like last year, they did get us an update before Christmas, the bug fix, 10.7.1. Logic did it this year. Logic did it on a Monday. Now, I don't know when Logic normally updates, but they did it on a Monday. They went from 11.1 to 11.1.1. Yeah, I guess it is 11.1.1, their bug fix. I said, okay, Final Cut's going to get the bug fix before Christmas, and they didn't do it. No, it's not a big deal, but it's just, statistically, I was kind of surprised that didn't happen, because they did it last year. So I guess we'll get something in January, typically. I mean, and now that we didn't get it before Christmas, they're not even there. I mean, the whole place is vacant, I'm sure. So the Apple Spaceship Campus is phenomenal. Every time, I've been there twice now, it's just like mind-blowing. You know what I mean? It's just really just an incredible structure, building, everything surrounding it. Every time I go there, and I was really glad they let us take exterior pictures this time. That was good. Let me see.
What's the next category we're supposed to grade here?
Somebody just told me that I had the audio off because I had it muted for that. Let me pull us up here. Hold on a second. I'll pull us up and bring us so we can talk about this on screen. And then we're going to do this and put Gabriel in this one. There we go. I love Ecamm Live. It's one of my favorite, absolutely favorite softwares. I've been using it for years. It's really incredible. Two brothers up in New Hampshire, I think, have been developing this. And it's just they've one advancement after another. Like right now, I'm doing them pulling you up, pulling me up, but I'm broadcasting one stream to their servers, and their servers are spreading it out to Facebook, YouTube, and Ecamm. I mean, X. And I've done Twitch TV before, but I don't do any gaming, so I'm never on there, but I did one there. Instagram I can do, but it's vertical, of course, so I don't do it there. But anyway, so the next update is the quality, I guess, of the features. What do you think about?
Now, is this recent history or is this overall like?
Well, this is 2024. Let's just say 2024.
I'm going to go with B because I appreciate the team a lot, and the things they did give us, even though they're not to repeat myself, but even though a lot of the stuff isn't huge headline grabbing features, is those little workflow things they did take the time to give us, and they do benefit my life every single day. And the big fancy thing, even magnetic mask is amazing, but I might not even need it in every video or every 10 videos. And even if I do, it might be for 1 or 2 shots in any given video. The rest of my time is spent doing things for which those little workflow improvements benefit my life tangibly. So right. I do appreciate the little things. They do add up a lot. And the team, they had to know that like being able to tab to different columns in the browser is not going to get an article written about it, but they put in the time to give it to us anyway, which means they care, which means they're listening to at least a subset of us as well as the loudest criers and screamers. So
I get a kick. I get a kick out of the internet. People are, whatever.
Now I will say though, I've used the transcribed captions on 2 different 40-minute podcasts in the last week, and it's impressively fast. So I've been using Mac Whisper before that. It's even faster than Mac Whisper.
Yes.
It's not as good though at like understanding the English language. Like for example, like this is a leadership client, and they're talking about a coach and a coachee. So like the coach and the student, but Final Cut, every time it came up with coachee, it would spell it differently. But like it is an actual word in the dictionary. So like I had to correct that. It doesn't add things like a parenthetical laughing or music. So it doesn't add those kind of context things that are important for closed captioning. So I'd like to see that get added in. Timing isn't great, but it's no worse than anything else I've used, and I've used multiple. But that said, like if you're using Mac Whisper, if you want to retime something, you have to literally like right click and like type in a time and then type in the next caption time. Whereas here, you're just dragging and adjusting titles.
Right.
So adjusting the timing is easier here. So it's completely replaced my transcription workflow, except that you can't generate a transcript. So I found a website that'll let you. As a text
site, you mean, yeah.
I could import the SRT and it'll give me a PDF. And I actually told that to the team at the summit or at some of the recent time that we need, like, I don't have a client that needs captions that doesn't also want a transcript. So until I can generate a transcript,
no, absolutely.
I can't do it all in the box.
That's a great point. That's a great point. Do I have a Southern accent to you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Well, there's a reason I mentioned that. When I was in a band, we toured up and down the East Coast. We went down and played at a coal mining town on the border between West Virginia and Kentucky. And we were kind of laughing at their accents, right? It's just in fun. It wasn't nothing. We didn't do it on stage. We just did it, talking to people. And we'd be laughing. And I always remember this one, a young lady said, "I don't know what you all are laughing at. We ain't the ones that got the accent. You all got the accent." So they thought
not wrong.
No, exactly. They thought we had a Northern accent. Within 2 weeks, we played at CBGB's in New York. And when we got in there, we were setting up and talking and stuff, and somebody in the bar or whatever said, "You guys are from down south, aren't you?" "What?" I don't consider Maryland a southern state. It is on the border. It's on the, between the border. But it was just so funny because in 2 weeks we were northern accent and then a southern accent. But anyway, the reason I brought that up was every time when I'm doing transcription, when I'm not transcriptions, but when I talk into the thing, to the Mac, and it listens on the microphone and does transcription for me, it always says Final Cut Protein. Instead of, it always says Final Cut Protein. No, Final Cut Pro Team. They always say protein. It must be my accent or something. But
it always capitalizes multicam as if it was a proper noun. It does this on iOS. It does this like everywhere. I don't understand.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
You have a native Alabaman telling you categorically that you do not have a Southern accent.
Okay, because you don't have one to me either. So.
Well, I'm in Milwaukee. I'm Midwest, so.
Yeah, but I mean, it just seems like an accent that doesn't,
I have a relatively neutral accent for the
neutral.
States,
That's what I wanted.
but
Yeah.
From another country, yeah.
Okay, what is this comment? Pretty sure Apple doesn't care to give the ability to update Power Mac by giving Power PC Mac users the ability to change the Apple Intelligence. I'm not sure. That's a hardware-ish comment. I'm not sure how to comment on that. I do have a Power PC, and I have an Intel Mac downstairs. For the color imagery, DaVinci remains the best, but on Final Cut, there are colorful and enhancer solutions. I don't use DaVinci Resolve for color correction because I don't know enough to get myself in trouble with that. I just use Final Cut, and this is one of the things that came from the iPad version, the color correction. Well, the enhanced, but the column view where you have a bunch of selections. Rather than the wheels, rather than the board, they added that, whatever you call that one. I use that a lot.
Enhanced light and color, I thought it was. No, there's the adjustment.
Adjustment, that's it, color adjustments panel. I like that. I use that a lot. So that came from the iPad
still
version.
Mostly a color. I never had a problem with the color board until the color wheels came out, and now that's, I'll use like the, hue sat, things like that. But my primaries are always just the wheels. I
remember people having, once again, this discussion on the internet. Oh, the color board's fine. You don't need color wheels, except everybody that color corrects professionally uses wheels. So I'm glad they kept the color board and added color wheels, not took one away and replaced it so then people will complain the other way. So Matthew says C-. I'm not sure which one he said he was responding to. Can Final Cut Pro 11 to 11.0.1 or... I'm not sure. He's a little mixed up here. I'm confused. Wait for Mac OS 15.3. Wait for Mac.
Well, because we don't have the full Apple Intelligence yet. Like that's still going to be rolled out between now and March, I think. And so, like my thought is, and I could be completely wrong. I don't understand. I don't know about code or how apps are built. Really, some of the things I was complaining about with the transcriptions, like that might be addressed simply with an Apple Intelligence update.
Very good. Yeah.
And awareness. So.
Yeah.
But
so I really like artificial intelligence / Apple Intelligence to do things that are mundane that I don't want to do, like transcribing audio. Fantastic. Yeah, enhancing audio dialogue, getting rid of, voice enhancer. Fantastic. I don't want it to do editing for me. Besides a rough cut, I don't want it to do the editing.
No, I don't want it to do any creative thing. I'm not a fan of Gen AI, where it's creating whole images. Like I played around with Image Playground, and it's fine if you just want to create a goofy picture to send to your family. But like for paid work, like I'm not comfortable with it.
So not having transcribed the titles was a swing and a miss. We have been waiting for auto titles like this for years more. So the point is, this is 11.0. So I expect transcribed to titles is going to be coming natively. I expect that would be something, since they're already transcribing, and maybe even a social media element if you want to do social media, titles.
I hope so, because I have to use CapCut again, I've got those podcasts I was talking about, and I have to do cut downs for social media, and
Sure.
they want the animated titles on screen. And
Right.
unfortunately, Philip and Greg's app, which is great, and I appreciate, it just doesn't provide the type of, they want, a blue box to highlight under every word as it's spoken. You just can't do
No,
that.
I understand.
So I have to use CapCut. And
Is there any title plugin for Final Cut that does that? What you're talking about?
well,
the
Motion VFX has some stuff, but I played around with it. I didn't give it as much time as I should have, but it didn't quite do what I wanted the way that I wanted it.
So since we're talking about CapCut, just for FYI, you probably already know this. It has a 42-page TOS, terms of service. 42 pages. Final Cut has 7. LumaFusion has 2 or 3. They have a 42 page that you agree to when you use CapCut. Just FYI.
I can't overestimate how much I would like to get that spyware off of my computer. But I've got a client that wants that one style of titles. So.
I completely understand, and I really, I wish somebody would do a plugin that gave us CapCut style for Final Cut, CapCut style animation for titles, because I really like it myself. Like I said, for short videos, for if you do I do a couple vertical videos here and there. It depends on the subject matter. It depends, what I'm doing, if it's vertical or not. But I still do mostly regular 16:9. But sometimes I go to a vertical. I said, let me try this and put it up, whatever. What the heck? So if Matthew says, I'm from Alabama, Richard, so that is a no. He goes, I don't have a southern northern accent. Final Cut protein. It happens all the time. I gotta say Final Cut Pro Team. So I very specifically say it very distinctly and make a cut between pro and team so it doesn't come up protein. I'm not talking about protein. I'm talking about the pro team. So the benefit with Resolve with color wheels is that you can specify the color space each node is in. Excellent, making one node linear. Color wheels, one channel of HSV color, 1, 2, 3. That's great. See, that's professional colorist.
Well, exactly, and the thing, like, Final Cut is absolutely a professional NLE. There's no question,
Yes.
but like that level of control adds a level of complexity that I think they don't want to give to their, like they're gonna find a way if they implement something like that to make it more intuitive. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
If people are getting confused, then the app isn't as strong as it could be.
Right.
So
that's correct. Absolutely correct. So here's your friend Brett, or our friend Brett. He says, hey, it's Gabriel. Brett Williams. I met him last year at the Creative Summit for the first time.
Yeah.
And he was
great.
He was pleasantly surprised that I was using his plugins. I said, I use Brett FX plugins. I said, absolutely. Yeah, I've got some as well. But I thought that was funny. So Tim says, isn't the Motion FX captioning a subscription model? Right, which I don't like.
Nope.
I mean, I don't. Motion. It seems from the outside, I have some Motion VFX perpetual license, and some of the other FX Factory I like better. But didn't Motion VFX just have a magnetic mask kind of a thing a couple months before it came out in Final Cut for subscription only or something? It was something people were talking about. I said, hey, I'm not going to do that. Give me a fair price for a perpetual license. Yeah. So I don't know if that's, I liked Final Cut's version. I was really, really surprised at how good it was. I mean, I'm using it for different things. As a matter of fact, the Michael Cioni video I put up before he put their version up, I used it on a short segment because he called me out about my tripod and stuff in the back of the room. He's done that more than one time. He really loves my setup. Every time he sees it, he wants to see what's the latest. But I cut him out just to do a little different contrast and color correction on him, and it worked fantastically. It was like magical. I mean, I just really, really like that for Final Cut Pro 7. So let's go back to our countdown here. Bug fixes, what kind of a grade? I mean, it's a combination of the quality and the amount of bug fixes. They didn't have that many. They only had 2 last year.
if A minus or B plus were an option, that's what I would give them because
Okay.
there are some bugs as of Final Cut 11, but that's only been out for a short time. People do report bugs online. Mostly, I think it's due to bad support of plugins. I rarely suffer from Final Cut bugs, and I've really suffered from them since the day it was released, like 13 some years ago.
Right.
So I think they're generally like really, really, really good at fixing Final Cut bugs.
Okay. But we only had one bug fix last year, 2024. We only had 10.8.1.
I didn't have any bugs last year either, so
Okay. There was, yeah. I mean, we only had one though. That seems like.
Well, I mean, but if you had 30 bug fixes in a year, that doesn't say a lot for the stability of the app.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah,
I see what you're saying. We didn't need them.
I get a lot more motion bugs by far than Final Cut bugs for sure.
Really? Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Huh. So that's bug fixes, and then miscellaneous, any kind of a general. What kind of a general grade would you give Final Cut at this point? I'm talking about Final Cut 11 since that's where we are.
For bug fixes, well, I mean, again, it just came out.
Miscellaneous.
They haven't had time to give us a bug fix, but I'm going to give it a B based on the recent past, and only because I can't give them an A plus because we haven't gotten a bug fix yet. So I'm going to say B.
I'm talking about Final Cut Pro 11 in general. So a B?
Yeah.
Listen, let me tell you something. I would agree with you. And I'm really glad that you gave it a B as well, and not say, oh, it's A plus, because I have some people that'll just go right to the top. Then you have no room for, like you said, for anything else. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's hard to grade at all because they haven't had enough time to give us a bug fix. So I can't give something an A plus that doesn't exist.
Right.
And I already prefaced this by saying I rarely give anything an A plus unless it's, the best of the best. So even B is being very judicious because we haven't gotten the bug fix yet. But based on their track record, I'm sure it'll come out. I'm sure it'll be soon, and I'm sure it'll fix the problem. So
yeah, I expected the last. Typically, I mean, a year and a half ago, they gave some bug fixes within 2 weeks.
Yeah,
the fastest they've ever done. Usually a month with a new full number update is a lot of times. Last time, 10.8.1 took 6 weeks. So that's reasonable. That's reasonable. So if we do the same kind of a rule, 6 weeks with Final Cut Pro 11, it'll come out in January. That's fine. I mean, I want them to take vacation. They certainly earned it this year. And I'm sure there's I always compare the Pro apps, Logic Pro to Final Cut, and they had it out for Christmas and Final Cut didn't, but I'm sure there's a reason. More complicated or whatever. Or they wanted to get more bugs fixed, or they wanted maybe they're adding a feature for whatever the heck they're doing. Who the heck knows? But we all like the Final Cut Pro team. We like them a lot. Team. So after captioning of not protein, Final Cut Pro team. We really they did such a great job at the Creative Summit for the last 2 years, and this year was just. You've raised the bar for presentations this year. Bradley Olson with Donuts and Final Cut Pro team with presenting at that fantastic theater, the Developer Center. And then we had a little walk. Are you grading
those things equally? Do you think the donuts were as good as the presentation?
Wow, that's a tough one. No, I'm just saying that both of those guys, Bradley and the team, raised the bar for the next Creative Summit. I'm sure there's going to be one.
Well, Brad told me that next year he's going to buy donuts daily for everyone that attends. So
yeah, I don't think so. They probably cost a small fortune. You had to take out a loan to get he had 3 boxes, I think it was. Yeah. That was really good. So I would give Final Cut Pro 11 a B plus. Somewhere, definitely not an A. I don't think any of the NLEs get an A, maybe an A minus sometimes in that area. I would say DaVinci Resolve and Final Cut go back and forth a little bit. But I'd say I agree with you. At this point, we've just had 11 for like 1 month, so.
Yeah. What's the next category? I don't see it.
Oh, it's
We got one final one, I think.
that was miscellaneous. Yeah.
Well, that requires a description.
That means you got to say something what you want to give it a grade on. If you have it, if that was in case I missed, these are just three things I put up there. Just people like to chime in, so I gave them three options in the miscellaneous. I don't know if there is a miscellaneous.
Do you want to go first on a miscellaneous? Take a swing.
Well, how did I do that? I got two different places. Let me go back over here. I didn't put you on the hardware controller yet. No, when I said B+, I meant that wasn't the bug fix. That was for a general Final Cut Pro grade at this level. Bug fix, I would agree with you, B or, yeah, I'd say B, because there aren't that many bugs that need fixing. It isn't like I hope there's not 20 bugs that need fixing that they're not paying attention to. I mean, they're very attentive, professional, friendly people, the entire team. This time I was interacting with Peter Stenauer quite a bit. I mean, not quite a bit, but do you remember my question at the Q&A at this summit this year?
Memory. Say the first few words.
Well, what it was, as I said, first off, I thanked them. I said, I thanked everybody for Final Cut Pro 11. I said, that was great. And I said, I want to thank everybody for doing that fantastic presentation at the theater. So first I thanked them. Then I said, when Final Cut Pro 10 came out, there was a 10-year roadmap mentioned.
Yeah.
And I said, is there any kind of a similar roadmap for Final Cut Pro 11, or are we going to see Final Cut Pro 12 in 6 months? That's what I said. And everybody.
And they said, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Well, they said something like that. But the thing was, Bill Davis said, because I took notes this time. I learned. Now I got to take notes. Bill Davis said, I wasn't even here when Final Cut Pro 10, when Apple mentioned that 10-year roadmap. And then Peter Stenauer said, I was on stage. Did I say that? And I didn't say he said that, but somebody next to me, who I'm not going to mention, yelled out, yes, you did. And it turns out he was not the one that said that. And it was not a roadmap. It was a 10-year, what was it called? I'll look it up. It was Richard Townhill who said it when 10.0.1 came out 6 months or 3 or 4 months later. That's when it was mentioned. And it wasn't Peter. Because I'm going to clear that up, that he did not say that. And the point was, and Bill Davis said, well, obviously, we don't talk about future plans. I wasn't talking about give us details on features. Just generally speaking,
yeah,
is it going to be another, are you thinking Final Cut Pro 11 for another 10 years? And they didn't, of course, didn't answer specifically. But I just wanted to say, well, we're going to get 10, 12 in 6 months, because that's the other end. You compress them down to next to nothing. So
what's this new? I would like to understand.
Okay, I'll put that one up since you mentioned it. I would like to understand when there are keynotes on the screen, there's DaVinci and not Final Cut, an explanation for that. Because they sell hardware, okay? And they just put out 2 promos for Final Cut Pro. And Apple Fitness uses Final Cut Pro. Now, I don't know if there's been any Apple Fitness promo videos that talk about that, but the whole Apple Fitness team uses Final Cut Pro. So, and the last presentations, the big ones with Tim Cook, didn't they say edited on Final Cut and Final Cut for iPad? Final Cut Pro and Final Cut Pro for iPad? Didn't they say that in the liner notes at the end? I think they said that. I've seen that. I've seen that because I've specifically said edited on Final Cut for, it says Final Cut for, because some of the online drawings or whatever was done on Final Cut for iPad, and then some of the, since we're talking about Final Cut for iPad and Final Cut Pro and the Creative Summit, et cetera, one of the interesting things, there are many interesting things. One of the interesting things that they distinguish this time is they do not consider Final Cut for iPad and Final Cut Pro to have feature parity, and that's not what their intention is. So that's good to know, because I've said, well, there's no way there's feature parity between these two. Some of the things, obviously they share some things. Other things, no. So that's good. They've publicly distinguished that they're not looking for feature parity between these two. They're looking for.
People will complain for sure because that's the world we live in. I think that's smart though, because like the type of work I do, I would hate to do on an iPad. But there are definite workflows and definite tasks that make more sense on a touch device with like a stylus, Apple Pencil. So I think it's smart to harness the strengths of each different type of interface.
That's exactly what they said they're going to do. And at the beginning, I'm thinking people were saying, oh, there's feature parity. I said, no, there's not. I cataloged 50 different things that the iPad version doesn't have that Final Cut Pro has. And so that's good because they're not meant to have feature parity. So going forward, they're going to have some common features and other features are going to be completely, like, for example, obviously the on-screen thing you can't do on the iPad, on the Mac version, but there's no reason why we can't have multicam live on the Mac.
We should be able to do that on the Mac. So, for example, in Motion, you can use like a Wacom tablet or a stylus to do animated paint strokes and things like that. Which means
there you go.
Input that. So why can't we do the same with Final Cut?
Or until we get a touchscreen MacBook Pro, which I've been saying they're going to have one of these days because the screens are the same now.
Or just have Final Cut recognize a Bluetooth connected iPad, and you use that instead of a Wacom. Since Apple makes the hardware, it's in their best interest to push that product use anyway.
But live multicam, there's no reason why we can't do that in Final Cut Pro on a Mac because I'm doing with Ecamm Live, been doing it for years. I can switch cameras live, record separate independent ones, et cetera, et cetera. So here's a question for you, for your guest. What is the reason you choose to use Final Cut Pro? Matthew's comment, he comes here all the time.
Yeah, I recognize the name. I think it goes back to the fact that by nature, I don't like software very much. I'm not a mechanic by any means, but I prefer to get my hands on things versus clicking virtual buttons and stuff like that. So when Final Cut first came out, it just I saw the demo and it kind of blew me away. It just really spoke to me. So, I know Final Cut extremely well, and I study software obsessively, which might seem counterintuitive for somebody who doesn't like software, but that's why I study it, is so that I can kind of get the mechanics out of the way and I can just use it intuitively.
Right.
Final Cut allows me to think like an artist and not like an engineer. That stuff just kind of gets out of the way for the most part. I don't know. There's just something, I feel like I'm playing. It doesn't feel like work.
It's more enjoyable for sure.
I used Premiere. I was a lead editor at a job years ago using Premiere. I've used Resolve to a point. I've studied Avid, and Resolve is the only track-based NLE I have any interest in. But I really don't like using tracks. So it's not for a lack of knowledge. I understand, all these tools can generate the same end result. It's fine. But if I'm going to spend 8 to 10 hours a day, 5 days a week for the rest of my life doing something, I'd rather not hate that thing that I'm doing. And Final Cut is the least painful and the most joyful tool for me to use. So I guess that's a large part of it. That plus, honestly, the older I've gotten, the more my friends have moved away. Almost all my friends are in this Final Cut community now, or through jobs I've had that involve Final Cut in one way or the other. So it's also, I have emotional connections to it. Anyway, there's your long-winded answer for.
No, that's good. I agree. Final Cut and LumaFusion are both the most fun NLEs to use. I just enjoy the workflow and how you work with them. Dissolve is definitely much more mechanical. But it's so powerful. Can you imagine if we had, because somebody mentioned this earlier, if we had the implementation like DaVinci Resolve has, if we had Final Cut, Motion, Logic, Compressor on just individual tabs, here's the thing, that you don't have to launch separate applications. You don't got to do FML export back and forth between Logic and Final Cut. It's just live. And you just...
I'm cautiously a fan of that idea. I've even suggested, why isn't Motion? A lot of people have never heard of Motion. They don't use it. I think if you're in this field, it's the best $50 you'll ever spend if you actually use it.
It's incredible.
I've easily made half the money I've ever made as an adult on Motion because of Motion. Okay. One $50 purchase. It's amazing. But a lot of people don't know about it. And, just think if Final Cut 11.1 or whatever was like, oh, now bundled in it is motion, it would be like the biggest update of all time. Like it
Yeah.
would generate all the headlines. But
Yep, I agree.
the more
I
you
agree.
add things into an app, especially something that deep, the much more difficult it is to maintain and keep free of bugs. So that's where I have caution with suggesting
Well,
rolling it all
maybe
into one.
maybe have the option. If you're not using compressor, you could check it off before you launch Final Cut, or if you're not using motion, you can check it off. That would be kind of cool. I mean, I'm just obviously I'm daydreaming. That's likely not going to happen. But I
Well,
really,
think
I
about
mean,
well, as far as like advanced, in Logic Pro, if you go open up the preferences, there's a button for like advanced mode. And
Yep.
if you have that off, you have a more streamlined, simple,
Yep.
certainly still deep, but a simpler interface. And if you turn that on,
absolutely, absolutely.
so if Final Cut did that, they could, they're
That's
people,
true.
if it's off by default, they have their very intuitive, easy to use subset for, most of your users, especially new users, but people who know what they're doing, turn it on and boom, now we have better keyframe control or things that
Right.
maybe the team thinks will add to confusion. It's now in your hands. We trust you because you turned this on. There's an option.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree. I like that in DaVinci Resolve. Everything's just click. Oh, you hear. But the thing is, it's all live linked too. So if I make a change in Logic Pro, it's live linked on the Final Cut Pro timeline. If I make a change in a motion title, it's live linked on the Final Cut Pro timeline. That would be phenomenal. That would
I
be
do
absolutely
miss
phenomenal.
send to motion for sure. Like motion,
Yes.
motion templates are amazing and were like a different revenue stream for me. They're very useful, but that's just getting from motion to Final Cut. There's no way to get
Right.
from Final Cut to motion without a third-party plugin, which is
Well,
another West Plate app.
Yeah, people talk about going from Final Cut to Logic all the time, and I say it's a one-way trip. You're not going from Final Cut to Logic and then Logic back to Final Cut. That's not the way it works. You go to Final Cut to Logic with a XML, but sometimes it doesn't translate right. Sometimes I get it put in Logic. It puts it. Every clip's got its own track. I don't know why, but it's just like I got 20 tracks. No, they were all in the same roll. Why anyway? And then you can't go back. You use stems or a mix to go back to Final Cut. You don't do the XML thing. A lot of people don't realize that. They think it's round tripping. Our friend Brett, I've come around on generative AI for stock media backgrounds and such. Yep, to be able to create just the right brick wall or custom background has been useful, and it's original-ish. Yeah, that would be a good thing to have in Final Cut, create stuff like that for generative AI. Let me see what else we got here.
Depends on the use case for me.
Another question, why does it take so long to evolve Final Cut? Do you think it's intentional? So you mean updating. They've talked about that, and this last time they said we're going to something about advanced accelerating something. I don't know what the heck they're talking about. They're doing it as fast as they feel comfortable doing it. Now they're being sometimes maybe a little too cautious, but they're getting there. They said last year, I thought there was I appreciated the honesty. We hear all the complaints about not being updated enough, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to tell you right now, we're going to update it on our time frame. That's how often we're going to update it. We listen to you, but we're still going to update it on our time frame. We know what's best. So I have to accept that. I like the honesty. We'll give them an applause. Final Cut Pro Team, Final Cut Pro Team, not protein. So for Apple, Final Cut Pro has become secondary. Compared to iPhones, of course it's secondary. There's nothing that compares to their hardware sales. But I'm just going to say there's 5 million Final Cut Pro seats because there was 2.5 million in 2018. So here we are 6 years later. There's certainly at least 5 million Final Cut Pro seats. That's 1.5 billion with a B dollars in Final Cut Pro sales. And it's probably more than that. It's probably 2 billion. But compared to an iPhone, no. Compared to a MacBook Pro, of course it's secondary.
Well,
of course it's secondary.
Keep in mind, if you cut with Final Cut, you have to buy Mac hardware. So there's much more revenue
Exactly.
involved than just
Yes.
the app sales.
We agree with you, Mills Core, that products bring in more. Of course, the iPhone, it's what launched. I mean, it's really been incredible ride to see Apple be the most.
Well, it's starting to feed back into itself too, because I mean, what's the main selling point for iPhone updates now is the camera. And now they've got Final Cut camera app, so that branding is working in there. And then people have to edit it. So, Final Cut for iPad. And, I really like editing. So maybe I'm on my iMac, I want to edit more advanced. So there's Final Cut Pro. Like, it's starting to feed back on itself. Like the hardware justifies the software justifies the hardware. More and more people are creating content, video, and I hate that word content, but video content more than ever before. So it all makes sense to me, big picture.
Yeah. I think what Final Cut Pro fans like the most is a magnetic timeline and dislike track-based NLE. That goes back and forth. If you use the track-based NLEs, you don't like the magnetic timeline. If you I like both. I like tracks for audio, to be honest with you. I like magnetic timeline for video, but for tracks, I like audio in tracks. I like them organized better. So that doesn't bother me. Logic has tracks, for example.
There are other things, though, like... I mean, my example before, my explanation before was kind of personally emotional, but like, honestly, the skimmer is one of my favorite things about Final Cut.
It's
the way it handles
fantastic.
audio channels. Like, going to Resolve or Premiere and opening up a separate panel and modifying your audio channels. And Premiere, you can't even see IXML data in that window at all. Whereas with Final Cut, like you can, and I've done this on small jobs and large team jobs, and like it's amazing. Like you can doesn't matter where your clip is in the browser, in a sequence, how it's configured, you can just add or subtract channels whenever you want. It's like the most intuitive, time-saving, brilliant thing ever. And nobody ever talks about it, but like Final Cut is chock full of little things like that you blink and you miss it. And then eventually when it hits you, you're like, wait a second, all these years I've never had to worry about this because of how brilliantly it handled it.
Right.
And they don't get, nearly enough credit for that type of thinking that goes into the app.
So our friend Brett says, don't roll it all in, just advanced compositing page mode, which is a subset of motion features, would be enough. Well, I don't know. I don't go back and forth between Logic and Final Cut, but I mean.
And at this point, with the magnetic mask, you could argue Final Cut has the better compositing option than Motion anyway.
Well, that's a good point. So I got a new Mac Mini. I got the Mac Mini Pro. Got everything except for the highway robbery SSDs that Apple charges. I got the 2 terabyte because I didn't want to restrict my basic, home folder. So I got the 2 terabyte. I'm only up to 500 gigabytes, and I think I've got everything over here. My mail's over here, and all my apps and everything that I use and support things. But I got the 4 terabyte Thunderbolt 5 drive from OWC that I can store stuff on. So basically I have, because it's always connected, basically I have 6 terabytes, but they wanted,
yeah, I know.
They wanted
it's gonna
$600 to go from 2 terabytes to 4 terabytes. $600.
No, in their defense, it is like the fastest SSD you're going to find.
Well, it's because it's a RAID 0. A bunch of chips are in RAID 0. So, and it is fast, and then go to 8 terabytes was $1,200 or $1,400. It's just too much. It's too much. Anyway, Apple knows what they're doing. They do it. I got the 2 terabyte with the external drive. It's plugged in constantly, so it's completely fine. I'm good to go. So let's do this one. So many intuitive attributes, but Final Cut Pro, for example, why can't you pinch to zoom the trackpad on the timeline like in Resolve? Zooming in on the timeline of Final Cut is a little bit clunky because
pinch to zoom is a little odd.
Well, what I do, in Logic, you can zoom vertically by using one keyboard modifier in my Magic Mouse. I think it's up, down, and then the other keyboard zooms in and out. In Logic, you can save 3 Zoom presets and bring them up with keyboard shortcuts. Final Cut is still, it's the zooming in and out. I have a keyboard that I tap, 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 go one way, tap, go the other, and of course, Shift to Z to bring it all in. But I like more options for zooming in Final Cut with keyboards shortcuts or keyboard modifier in my mouse, like I do in Logic.
Command plus, Command minus, and Shift Z. You also have the zoom tool you can use, which I find it slower because as soon as you have to, click and drag a cursor, it's automatically slower. But you're also used to audio. You're an audio professional, so you're used to having those types of.
I think option and then scroll on your mouse zooms horizontally, and then maybe command. I forget what it is in Logic, but I use that all the time. I just put my keyboard down and zoom in and out, and I can go. And plus, I have the presets, 3 zoom level presets. You set them with the keyboard shortcut, and you recall them with the keyboard shortcut. It's not the same shortcuts.
Nice. Like I know Resolve has that, and I think Premiere might have that. Where if you can hit a shortcut to zoom into a spot, and then when you hit it again, it goes back to where you were, versus just some random.
Right. Well, that's the other. Yeah, that's the other thing. Yeah, exactly. So they can use some features like that. So the interesting thing at the Creative Summit, they said Levin and Apple said it on their website, and the Final Cut Pro team. This is a new chapter of Final Cut Pro. That's the reason I asked them about the roadmap. That I said, well, does that mean another? Don't commit to it, but just are you thinking Final Cut Pro 11 for 10 more years, or whatever? That's why I asked it. But it's a new chapter. You can't call it Final Cut Pro X anymore. I mean, you can, but it's Final Cut Pro 11, so 10 is in the background.
Yeah, and they kind of dropped the X, a couple years ago, I think. It was just Final Cut Pro. So
right, but it still was 10, Final Cut Pro 10.8.7.6. It still was the 10 was, no, they did drop the X because that was, I remember when they first started with X. I don't know if you remember this or not. Oh, X, no, it's 10. No, it's X, no, it's 10. It's just like, oh, good Lord. I remember the very first time.
Right in the release notes is 10.0, 10.01, 10.1. It was clearly a Roman numeral, but
that's ridiculous, though. They expected people to know what a Roman numeral was. I mean, and I did a compilation of the pronunciation of Final Cut Pro back at the very beginning. Final Cut Pro X. And all these people said X, including Steve Martin when the first time.
I never called it X.
I call it X all the time. It's just like Mac OS X, XML, FCP XML. It's not FCP 10ML. It's FCP. So, anyways,
but the X means extensible. It doesn't mean 10.
Yeah, but it's still an X on screen. When people say FCP extensible ML, no, they say FCP XML. It's still an X. And I did this compilation, and like I said, Steve Martin, the guy that did, a lot of people in Apple Final Cut Pro world called it X, 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 X. It's not important to me, but it's just that the argument that you have to call it 10. No. What's the hashtag? Is the hashtag on Twitter FCP10? No, it's FCPX. They don't say FCP10, so it's just, anyway, getting rid of it was great. But anyway, Final Cut Pro 10's in the rear view. Final Cut Pro 11 is the future. Well, I want to thank you, Gabriel, for joining us today. I'll bring you back on. I wanted to get you on this year since you were at the Creative Summit again.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
I'm glad you were available.
Pleasantly surprised to see your message come through, almost last minute. But
it was because I wasn't even sure if I was going to do one today, because I'm like, people are on vacation or going to, whatever. But it turned out well. We got probably close to 100 people watching live right now between Twitter and Facebook and YouTube. Surprisingly, Twitter's been X has been a very big market for live streaming.
Just going to ask, do you call Twitter 10 or X now?
No, I call it X. Because he doesn't call it 10. Nobody calls it's X.com. How did he do that?
I don't call it Final Cut X, and I don't call Twitter X. I still call it Twitter. So,
Well, Twitter X. But I mean, I've been broadcasting on Twitter /X for years. I did Periscope for years on there, so I never even had to do anything to switch over. It just was available. Ecamm Live is available there. You got to log in, of course, and get permission. But we got a lot of live stream people over there. And so I know buddies from X, and he says X, EKS. Of course. So did you have a good Christmas?
Yeah, it was low key. Just me and my wife. Our tradition is to go see a movie, so we saw Nosferatu on Christmas Day.
Okay.
Very, very Christmas spirity. It was good. I recommend it.
So they had that new Bob Dylan biographic biopic.
It's supposed to be really good.
Yeah, it's supposed to be really good. I'm a big Dylan fan, especially the 60s Dylan up through the 70s and some of the stuff. The 60s were just absolutely... When I was a little kid in single digits, Like a Rolling Stone came out. And like, I'm used to top 40 radio. I'm used to I Want to Hold Your Hand. And I'm used to Herman's Hermits. And all of a sudden, I'm a little kid. This Like a Rolling Stone. What? What is this? What is this? This is 5 or 6 or 7 minutes long, first off. The lyrics and the sound was just incredible. So I've been a big fan ever since then. But if you like if you want to see the Dylan biopic, go see there's 2 documentaries. Don't Look Back, and the one whatever Martin Scorsese did, that is real footage of the real version of Bob Dylan performing on stage, performing at the folk festival when he first turned electric, plenty of interviews with the press, the real guy in the real settings. There's plenty of material, so go see those as well. Yeah, I'm going to see it too. Yeah. Yep, absolutely. So New Year's, any special plans? I mean, for the year?
I don't think so. I've had, work has been incredibly slow since like July, but I finally picked up a few things, so I think I'll actually be working, hopefully.
Oh, good. That always helps. Yeah,
it does.
Good old work stuff. Yep. All right, we're going to head on out of here. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We want to give a special round of applause to the Final Cut Pro team and the future media conferences. You did such a great job at the summit. Ben, if you're listening, if you watch this, he usually lets me know early when the summit's coming on. It confirms it, but of course I don't say anything until they announce it. But it was, it'll probably be in November of next year, hopefully back at the. So, did you like the Juniper versus the last place?
Yeah,
now, I don't. If they had the motel room in the last hotel, would have been better.
I split an Airbnb with someone in last year, and
Brad.
It was less expensive, but then it's a long hike to get to the Juniper costs a little more, but it's really nice to be able to just take an elevator and at the event. Because
absolutely,
the magic is in all the in between sessions and before and after the day with all the people. So the more time you have with them, the better. And
they had catering for us this time.
Yeah, again next year, Brad's going to bring donuts for everybody every day.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Every day.
And this is now on record twice, Brad.
That's right. The Brad Donut lobby kiosk. Just look for Brad going, hey, donuts are over here. So I brought a few people over once he gave me one. I said, can I bring somebody over? A couple people. And it worked out really, really well. Yeah, I had a really, really good time this time. As usual, but this is I think last time was the best. I have to say, back at the Juniper and the presentation from the team and Final Cut Pro 11 and Brad's Donuts. And
you really like those donuts. Yeah.
Well, I only had one, but that's, I want to encourage him to keep doing that. So.
Yeah, you should text him privately every day.
We text back and forth usually quite a bit. All right. So, Gabriel, I'm really glad you could make it, like I said, and we'll have you back on between now and the next summit. I think I'm going to get people on. I do these by myself, but I don't mind having somebody come on as a guest as well.
Brad and I will happily come on together, and
absolutely,
he can answer for this donuts thing that's been built up now.
Absolutely. I'm going to keep building it up. And our friend Brett Aloft with More Fun After Hours, just having it all in one place was better at the juniper. Yeah. Well, loft was cool.
I'd love to be on a call here with Brett as well.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I think I'm going to stick to Saturdays. During the week, I have more fun on Saturdays. And I've kind of built up an audience. This is episode number 96, I think it is. Is that what it is? 96. Wait a minute. Let me see. Oh, I'm covering it up. Yeah, 96. Final Cut Pro and Coffee number 96. So, nice. Yeah, so that's almost 2 years.
I haven't had coffee this whole time.
Oh, my goodness. This is my Snoopy mug. I like this mug so much. First off, it's big, so I get 2 squishes of coffee in here. And I like it so much we got a second one, so I can always have one that's clean.
Wait, where do you live? Baltimore, Maryland? Where is it?
Yeah, outside of Baltimore, between Baltimore and D.C., north of D.C. and northwest of Baltimore. So
when I go to a coffee shop there, do I have to order squishes? Do I order my coffee in squishes?
The squishes are the what I call the AeroPress. You ever have an AeroPress coffee maker?
No, I've got a French press.
It's like a French press, but it's not gritty because it goes through a paper filter, and it's plastic, not metal, not a metal mesh. And my girlfriend broke my last French press, so I got a stainless steel. It was used for a water pitcher to go back and forth to the filtered water, and she broke it one time, so I got a stainless steel one. So I said, you ain't gonna break this, real thick. So anyway, it's like a same idea, but squish because you're squishing the coffee down into. I use 2 double scoops and squish it down into the cup. No, they don't call it that.
Good, because I won't be as embarrassed now because I would have gone there ordering squishes, 3 squishes of coffee.
Yeah, they would have given you, I don't know what squishes.
They would have detected my accent and known
exactly.
I was completely out of place there.
Anyway, thanks everybody for showing up. We appreciate everybody here. Thanks, Gabriel, the Final Cut Pro team, Future Media Conferences, everybody that came around. And we will see you, if not, probably not till next Saturday, because I don't expect any updates this week. There was no way they'd sneak one out. There's no way they'd sneak one out. Everybody's giving us thumbs up, lots of thumbs up. Got over 100 people watching between the 3 platforms right now live, which is really, really cool. Really appreciate it. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Gabe. Talk to you, everybody, later.
Thanks, Richard.